saw a Twitter post the other day that I think went viral that pretty much sums up the thoughts of many. The person posted, "Honestly, I hadn't planned on giving up quite this much for Lent." We are certainly living in extraordinary times where we, whether we wanted to or not, are living Lent, are giving things up, are making sacrifice, or engaging in a fast. For us as Catholics, it's certainly a very difficult fast, and fasting from the Eucharist and fasting from gathering as a family of faith for the celebration of Mass, the most sacred part of our day. But it's a sacrifice of not being able to be in the physical presence of others, co-workers or friends or classmates or even family members. And as we begin this homily, I just want to first and foremost just let you know that parish life does continue, even if we can't be in the presence of one another. Mass is continued to be celebrated each day through our live stream. And as we gather here this morning, you can't see it on the camera, but I have a table here in the center aisle with my computer playing a PowerPoint of pictures of parishioners that have been sent in. And certainly an invitation that if you'd like to be included in this, please email me selfies or pictures of your family that could be included in this, to remind me and to remind all of us that we are still united, even if we cannot be in each other's physical presence. We do have some funerals coming in that we're still celebrating and that we're reaching out to family members. We have a baptism happening later today. The staff are all working from home, so voicemail and email is really getting its work out. And, well, even an isolation can't prevent meetings from happening. I have a few of those scheduled for this week. I also draw your attention to our parish website or to the bulletin, which you can download from the site, or if you're by the church during the day, you can pick up at the doors of the church, that lists a number of resources for us to continue to grow spiritually. We've been able to move some of our parish activities to online platforms, and we've created some new programs that start this week. I also want to just make one note is the daily schedules we posted the other day has been tweaked a little bit as we've been implementing it, and we're discovering some glitches in trying to put it out. So it's still being adjusted a little bit, but do pay attention to our Facebook page. Through the website, there's a link to a blog that I set up that I'm keeping that schedule up to date that way. This past week, you should have received an automated phone call from me. If you didn't, for some reason, I don't have your information in the PDS. We're still trying to reconcile the database, the paper database, with the computer database, so you can send that information in as well. But this week, the staff and I will begin reaching out to parishioners just to touch base and to let them know of our prayers for all of you. This season of Lent in our parish, we began a homily series called When God Doesn't Make Sense. And we're still going to go with that theme because it seems, well, in light of everything, to be a pretty relevant theme. We're going to go in a little bit of a different direction, I think, than what we had originally mapped out. So this week's bulletin on the theme may be a little bit different than what you hear right now. But it is important to realize, even as we go through this theme and how it applies and how our faith in the season of Lent applies to the situation we find ourselves in throughout the world, that we keep those three principles in mind that Deacon Frank shared with us on our first week together. First, we need to realize that God's wisdom is perfect, that He's all-knowing, and that we aren't. That our understanding of what God knows is limited. And because of that, there's going to be times that God doesn't make sense because, well, we don't understand fully. Two, sometimes it's really life that doesn't make sense. Lots of things occur that aren't God's doing, but we're quick to blame Him, when in reality, there's a human cause, known or unknown, to the situation we find ourselves in. And the third principle is, all we know about God is what He has revealed to us. The first week that we reflected on when God says no. Then we spent some time on on suffering and how that makes any sense in the spiritual life. And then last week we reflected a time about when God seems to have forgotten us. This week, well, how does all this apply to the current situation? We're in a situation that is very difficult to understand. In fact, many of my conversations with friends this past week has been, this is just unbelievable. 2 weeks ago, even less than that, we didn't see ourselves here in this situation. We find ourselves in whole different living situations. Our moments, very important life moments, are changed. It can't occur the way that we envisioned. Our high school and college seniors never envisioned the senior year ending so quickly. Grandparents, many of whom are unable to visit their grandchildren. Even I mentioned the funeral and baptism. Those are very different because we're limited as to how many can gather together. Our routines have changed dramatically. And many in our family of faith and throughout our country and world are concerned about employment, about finances. Will there be massive layoffs? How are we going to afford all of this? We find ourselves, in light of all this, struggling with anxiety. And the reading that we heard last week, the question from the people of Israel, I'm sure it pops right back in our mind. Is the Lord in our midst or not? But it's important for us to hear Jesus' words in the gospel today. I invite you at some point, we only heard a part of it today, but read the entire chapter 9 of John's gospel. The disciples, in encountering the man born blind, asked Jesus, who sinned, this man or his parents? A recognition that physical ailments, physical disabilities, or even mental disabilities don't come from God. But at the time, they would have been recognized as perhaps a punishment for sins, either his own or his parents or a previous generation. There's a look to blame, like the people of Israel last week blaming Moses and Yahweh for their lack of water. But Jesus answers, neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. He's not saying that God caused all of this. In fact, he's saying don't let the cause distract you, but rather that God will use this disability, these challenges, to make his power known. God didn't create the coronavirus, but he will use it to make himself known, his power in his glory. The first reading, we're told, not as man sees, does God see. We are living in challenging times, but we need to also recognize the opportunity that is before us. An opportunity to experience healing from the Lord. An opportunity to grow in our faith and our love of Christ. Throughout the season of Lent, our psalm has been Psalm 91. Be with me, Lord. If you recall the wristbands that we gave out at the beginning with that quote from that psalm. A very appropriate prayer for us in this time. But if you look at the readings for the day, the other song that we use today is Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And in verse 4, the psalmist says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. For you are with me. The Lord is at our side. In our times of illness and uncertainty, our times of struggle, we find strength from the presence of other people. And today, the scriptures are reminding us that the Lord is here in our midst. Our anxiety comes from the need to be in control. Our anxiety and that need can blind us to the presence of God. The experts have been telling us of the importance of routines, creating routines to make life as normal as possible. The importance of communication, speaking of what we're worried about, but also speaking of what the facts are of the situation. Of our need for recreation, which may be very different than it was 2 weeks ago, but still the need to keep ourselves busy, to remind us what life is all about, to appreciate beauty and love and goodness and truth and joy. The great idea I started going around and mentioned in the video the other day on YouTube was taking some time each day to journal, to share the experience of this, because this is truly a historical moment that we can learn a lot from. And keeping in touch with one another in this world of technology, it's so easy to do, not just with letters, but through phone calls and emails and video chatting, so on and so forth. But we need to use this as a time for our spiritual routines, a time where we can grow closer in the Lord, taking time for prayer ourselves or with our family members, joining us at Mass each day. It's going to be live streamed at 8 o'clock, and by 11 a.m. I should have it posted up on the blog and Facebook. Some of the faith activities we have listed in the bulletin to become part of our routines, particularly we're offering a retreat at home based on what happens in colleges and universities called the Busy Student Retreat. We pledge to take some extra time each day for prayer or some type of faith activity, where it's Mass or a rosary, whether it's reading scripture for a time each day, and some other activities that we're offering that could be part of that spiritual activity. We are living in a situation that no one wants, a situation beyond our control. But it's not a situation that we've been abandoned by God. This can be a time of great grace, a time when we see God's glory at work, a time of great spiritual renewal.